Hello, Mr. Brask. My name is Eric, and I teach math at St. Pat's along with Laura. It only took her about, I don't know, 3 years to mention that you program, so she doesn't like talking about math much anyways, so it came as quite a surprise to me. But I was super excited to hear that you're working on an education product. Of course, in the future, I see that as I guess, a project that I wouldn't be disinterested in working on in the education sector. But I do think there's a lot of cool data applications out there, you know, all this buzz around machine learning and AI. I think I have a strong enough math background to learn a lot more statistics and basically go off in that direction. But I was looking at the homepage of your website, and one thing I did was I used the Google Chrome and Spec Tools, and I was just perusing your code, and I noticed that there are some small changes I think that you can make that are a little bit more in line with the ways that developers nowadays think about applications. One of the first things, and I guess I'll switch cameras. This is kind of double me. Let's see, just screen. Better. Okay. So one of the things that developers think a lot about is they think about this concept called mobile first. Chances are if someone's going to interact with your product, they heard about it from someone face to face, and if they're super interested, they're going to check it out on their phone. So you can see right here on the screen, I'm modeling the application, or at least the login page to it, on a device that would be about 1,550 pixels wide. But you will notice that as the device shrinks, so right now we're getting into like the iPad range. It still looks fine, but then we get smaller and smaller under the iPad range, so now we're talking about phone range, and it becomes a little bit awkward to read. And if we go even smaller down to smaller phones, we can see that the appearance of it is a little bit distracting. And there's some quick fixes that we can do to make that happen. So on a separate screen, I downloaded what you had, and we got the old version and the new version. So basically, I'm just going to delete a bunch of this code and build it back up from scratch. But what was the clear giveaway sign to me was that you're using table elements to structure the page. And so while table elements are good because you can, finally control where things are on the page, they're not really, really flexible. And from about, let's say, the HTML5 era and the CSS3 era, we're now able to use things. I saw in your CSS code there were media queries, but we're able to use some new elements and some new classes and some new properties just to be able to get a more flexible display. And a lot of that's actually responsible due to Bootstrap. So I saw that your navbar was via Bootstrap. It actually kind of changed the game and reset the standards in the industry. So you're just a few steps away from cleaning that up. But here's what I mean by that is when we go back to, where is it? Let me go back to the camera. Where's it at? Just the screen. Okay, so when you see it gets kind of scrunched like this, the problem is that really this should be one element, this should be one element, this should be one element, and this should be an element. And as the screen compresses, this 2x2 system should jump down to a 4x1 system. So that is what we call a flexible display, and it's going to use some overflow. So here's what it looks like on the Bootstrap's website. I did notice that you're on version, it says version 4.0 here, but you're on 3.3.7, so they changed up the words a little bit. But remember what I said about mobile first, make sure it looks good on phones, and then scale your way up. So what we're going to do is instead of table, we're going to use something called the container element. Essentially, this is just a giant padding box. But then they introduced this thing called the grid system. So what the grid system does is it officially divides every website up into 12 units. And that's just because 12 has a lot of divisors. We're getting mathy. It's divisible by 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. So at one layout in your media query, it should be a 50-50 split. But then when it shrinks to the phone size, it should be at 100% width. And so they use container class, the row class, and these things called column classes to simulate that behavior. And here's exactly how it does it. Essentially, if your media query is on the phone size, it's only going to activate some classes. But if it's on the laptop or higher, it will activate other classes. And here's the cutoff benchmarks, like I was saying. Phones are all definitely under 768 pixels, and we're going to be using XS for the phone. But for anything else that's not a phone, we're going to be going to smalls. So here we go. Here's the fun part. I'm just start deleting a bunch of the code and trying to put it back and see if we actually achieve the same effect. So you might just want to skip through all of this, maybe 5 minutes or so to see if it actually works. I'm keeping an eye on a clock. I've already been talking for 6 minutes, and this is quite a long time, but let's see it happen. Alright, so we'll just go straight to, I don't know, I guess we'll keep it on me 50-50 for a bit. Okay, so let's kill this table. A lot of information in the table, most of it, actually. Alright, so goodbye table. I guess I should bring this up also. This is very stream of consciousness right now. What do we have? We have semantic HTML5 tags. It's oh, here we go. Perfect. You don't want to use the div over and over and over again. So obviously you know about header and footer, but we have sections, we have articles. There's even this other one called main. So since the entirety of your website was really in that table, I'm going to use the main tag, and then for each one of those bricks that I said, we're actually going to use section tags. That can simplify your CSS later. So here we go. We'll say main, that represented the table. I guess we should really have two sections, because you had your section before the HR and you had your section after the HR. Am I right? So if you wanted to, we could call this an info class, and if you wanted to, I don't know, let's go with ID actually. We're not reusing this. I should practice my fundamentals more. We could call this contact. I hope that doesn't conflict with styles you already have. Inside here, I guess this should also be class container, because again we're importing that from the Bootstrap CSS file. Class container. Okay, and we said that there were rows and articles, so I'm going to say div class row, and then we'll also have another div class row, and inside here we'll just be fancy. I'll say article, and this is where we start activating the column classes. So actually, let's get rid of that and copy it again when I'm all done. Okay, so this is where we say call XS, and then we say 12. So what this signifies is when we are on the smallest device, it's going to fill up the full 12 out of 12. In the Bootstrap's grid system, it assumes everything's divisible by 12. So this is one way of saying full width. However, when the device that we're looking at is actually in a small range, we're saying we don't need to use all 12 of those boxes. We can just satisfy ourselves with 6. And so like you saw, if I have two columns, right, because these are both columns, in a row, those are the first two things that you had. And they were stacked on top of other ones. So I can just take this row again, stick another row underneath here, and that accomplishes the same goal. And in fact, in your other section down here, in the content section, you also had a 50-50 split. So that would happen. So let's just take a look at your website. I'll go back to a bigger code view so you can see this screen. By the way, when you see my head tilted to the side, that's because I have a double monitor setup, so I'm looking at a screencast of myself on the other monitor. Where's it at? Alright, don't need this anymore. Okay, yeah, exactly. So what I just did was I did these two sections right here. This was that 50-50 split. This is that other 50-50 split. Here was your HR. I guess I jumped all the way down to here. I guess these just always went across the page, so I was a little bit off in that. Those don't really need a whole lot. So, alright, let's see. You got this section, and then you had your HR, and then I guess we had another section, right? And we don't have a class for that yet. Container. By the way, I haven't done this yet, so this is a dry run. You can say, just copy this, right? Copy, paste. It actually never achieves 6, so I think we actually need both, because the way inequalities work, one was less than and one was greater than or equal to. So we're just going to say that it's going to be 12 for all settings regardless. And what did you title this as? Let's see. Alright, feedback and other things. I don't know. I guess I'll just say extra info. I don't really have a good category for that right now. ID equals extra. Okay. So looking at what you had there, again going back, I believe in your code these were H2s or something. Let's see. So register, enhance. It doesn't look like H's were used much in here. Where were they used? Up top? And you had classes for H's, so did they happen at the bottom? Oh, down here, H5. I'm just not reading fast enough. Okay, H4 was, yes, so you're using H4s for those. Sorry, I was not seeing that. Okay, so inside here, you had a H4. Oh, and I guess there was a setup on top of it, but I mean, you can do this part. That's not really much of a detail. Quick start, enhancements. So, quick start in here for enhancements. This is a H4 service hours. And pricing. And of course, we had lovely ULs and LIs in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like you use the word use a lot. So UL, LI, oops, LI, use thing. Of course, I'm just mocking this up. All right. So that happened, right? Use thing, 444, then you've got 2 here. They actually don't have bullet points, so those are just P's, I believe. Alright. We could use good old lorem ipsum, you know. Lorem. I don't want all of that. Cut it. Paste it. And I don't want that. Cut it. Cut. Alright, what are we doing? So we just did these 4, and I guess it is still kind of bugging me that there's a row up here for setup. So before this row, div class row, And we can say div copy this, but we have to change that to a 12 so that it stays the same no matter what we do. And I guess that's still the H4 setup, right? So setup, register or login. How am I doing on time? Oh, I've already hit 15 minutes. All right. Wow, this is a long, long time. I'll put a note that you should keep skipping ahead. Feedback, integrated IEP. So which one is this? This is HR. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. H4 feedback P. Would this work? Alright, and then of course down here, which is support you, so I'm just going to stick 2 H4s and a P. So down here, so H4, I guess it's garbage, right? Kind of taking a long time on this. I wonder if I can just copy this directly, what that would do. There's something called pre-formatted text too. It's a new tag, so it's actually super awesome. Yeah, and if I tab this over, it'll stay tabbed over. Oh, that's the opposite of tab. Alright, so now's the moment of truth, of course, with all technology. This is what your page looked like. I'm going to refresh it and see if everything got destroyed. Oh, this says index.html. We changed new index. Let's open that up. New index. Alright, so cool. As you can see, there are a lot of similarities between your website and my website. Of course, I just did this in like 15 minutes, but we preserved a lot of the layout structure. You got this 50-50 split going on here. Of course, your words are more entertaining than mine. But let's look at what happens when we shrink my website. When we shrink it, the words get closer together, but then all of a sudden, alright, see now it's a little bit easier to read, where all the words aren't really jumbled up. Again, we look over here. It's kind of, you know, let's say that this is pretty messy, but if we look at mine, mine's a little bit more readable. It's a little bit more inviting. Of course, I didn't use good spacing between the words. You know, I could probably put them a little bit further apart. I might bold the titles. This might also help. But I think you can agree that this right here is not really fun to read. This is a little bit more inviting. And it's easier to scroll on the phone, definitely if you're on a phone. So this is what we call mobile first. And it's a little bit nicer. So you pull it out, and boom, it's like that. Push it in, boom, pull it out, push it in. And Bootstrap is doing that for us, but it's how I arranged these columns and these rows and these divs that accomplish that. Here's another thing I noticed in your CSS file. It's pretty short, which is nice. There is a tiny amount of redundancy, and there's this really cool new thing that happened. It's called CSS custom properties. In other words, if you have, let's change this. Okay, so if you keep using the same values over and over again, that indicates that you really should be using a variable. So actually in CSS now we can define things that we want to use over and over again. So if it changes once, we don't have to worry about typing it a million times. And so it doesn't really matter the first time you code your website. You do the same amount of typing either way. But if you ever want to make changes to your website, I'm telling you, literally, this can save you, you know, 5 minutes each time you want to change something on a website. Using Control F is okay, but you never know, it can get kind of weird. Alright, so scrolling through this website, what do we got? Alright, this is the secret right here. So right here where it says root, this is, you're saying the base of my website is going to have these variables. CSS knows that it's a variable if it's got these double ticks in front of it, and so this would be your main background color. Now, if you want to use it for anywhere on the website, you just need to use var and parentheses. So this is really good for colors, obviously. If you have a thematic color for your website, and it changes, you don't need to change it over and over again. Let's say that, again, you have padding for a phone, but you have padding for a laptop. You can make a variable called small pad, another variable called large pad, and then you're not having to do like padding 15 everywhere and change it. You can just say small pad, small pad, small pad, and if it ever needs to change because resolutions of phones get bigger, you only have to change that variable at the top, and you know, that pretty much does it. So let's take this as a hint. Let's go back to your CSS code, and let's say at the top before body I wanted to establish a root. So instead of main background color, let's see what colors you do use. So it actually feels like your main color is this tan. So it looks like you've got brown, tan, red, and dark. So we're actually just going to say brown, you know. Ooh, I misspelled brown, but whatever. Alright. Brown, red, you use a different color for red, dark, and tan. Okay, so let's actually find out what those colors were that you used. So for red, you used this, copy, and for dark, you used, where did it go? This one. And tan, this is definitely where we get the bang for our buck, right? That's this one. Copy tan. Alright, so let's delete your colors and let's use them. Okay, I guess this is technically brown. I guess I forgot about that one. Okay, so let's search for them, right? So, oh, I found red. So if red ever changes, I can say var red, and it'll use it. And this one is dark, var dark. My IDE that I'm using is called Atom, and as you can see I have some packages enabled that are helping me to do this. This is called multiple cursors, var, and which one was it? This one was tan. So I just typed all three of those at the same time. This one is var brown. Okay. Yes, color red. So this is var red. QR code margin 15. You have body content 15. As I said, this becomes more important when you have media queries. When sizes change, when you have media queries, then you don't have to go through and retype everything. Alright, D7 is tan, so this is the last one, var tan. So that's one more thing. You can use CSS variables. I guess I'll use it here, right? So you've got 4 pixels for left padding, and here you have 5, and here you have 5. It seems kind of arbitrary why you wanted 5 instead of 4. I'm not really sure what detail factored in there with that, maybe just the look of it. But same idea. Like, let's say you call this small space. I could give it 4 pixels. And I know I'm kind of destroying the theme a little bit, but this could disappear, and this could be var. Let's be small. What did I type it as? Small space. Alright, so that would work. And then I take that here, copy, TD short. Well, we killed all the TDs, right? Am I right? I think we did. I don't think I need them anymore. But actually that would change your other styles if I did that, so I won't influence that right now. Where do I see more 4 pixels? Here. This is kind of the same. Another one that pops up a lot seems to be 15, but that's relative. Alright, so save it. Let's go to the screen. Okay, so again, this is your version, this is my version. I changed a bunch of variables. Translate page. No, I don't care about translating the page. As you can see, the variables didn't destroy it. Everything kind of shifted up a tiny bit, but that's because I changed some of those 5 pixels to 4 pixels. So that's a cool technique, using CSS variables. There is one more thing I wanted to mention. Maybe I made a folder named after you. Where did I put it? Grad school. Alright, cool. So Google has this nice tool called Page Speed Insights. Essentially, it ranks how well your website is optimized, and it turns out your website is pretty highly optimized. But as we can see, it's better for the desktop than it is for the mobile phone. And the more that people use your website, the more data that they'll get, and they'll be able to give you some scores. So here's some summary. It says that your areas of opportunity are to reduce wait time. Essentially, that just means pay money for a faster server, but that's, I mean, it's in the early stages, so whatever. This one, enable compression. Half of the things that you have are compressed, and the other half aren't. It are the resources that you have on the CDNs. They're not actually gzipped. So actually, if you just copy and pasted the code from wherever you're hosting it on the CDN, and then you just had your own server send it as opposed to the CDN, it would probably be compressed. And here is one of the, again, this is a good thing about your site. So when I pull up this and I look at network performance and I hit it, the server that you own is running the H2 protocol as opposed to HTTP 1.1, and what that means is it's actually much smarter. Normally, where should I get me back here? Okay, so normally in the HTTP 1 days, you would ask for the HTML file, and then the HTML file would contact the server again and then like send back the CSS files. And so that took a lot of extra time, a lot of extra waiting between the two. But with the H2 protocol, it can actually scan your index file and it can figure out what it should send right away. So that's actually why CDNs are actually less important when you have H2, because your H2 server will be able to send it right away. And this, which is from the CDN server, your Bootstrap, that one did not get gzipped. And your jQuery did, which one is here? Oh yeah, this one, the Bootstrap again, did not get gzipped. And whatever, your favicon is so small it doesn't really matter if you gzip it. It's like 10 kilobytes, no big deal. But Google was reporting that you could save a whole second if they were gzipped. So if you send them from your server as opposed to a CDN, you'd get a 1 second boost, which it said, what was your content time to load? That's actually like super fast. But apparently you can shave more off that. Let's see if I do it again. Yeah, it's still under a second. Anything under a second is great. That one took more. Of course it's going to be an average, but yeah, I think you could cut that time in half if you did that. Everything in H2 runs, I want to say, parallel-ish anyways, so that's cool. Removed unused CSS. Yes. You're using the navbar from the Bootstraps. I think the other pages that you use are using Bootstraps more intensely than just this landing page. So I found another link for you. Once upon a time. Oh, it's over here. There are these words that you can add to scripts and these words that you can add to CSS to actually increase the parallel processing and speed up what the user experiences. There's for CSS, and there's another one for JavaScript. So let's talk about the JavaScript one first. And I want it to be on another page. So TLDR basically means you want the CSS and the HTML to be ready before the JavaScript. And so if you have this script right here in the middle of your code, that's going to be blocking. So how do we make it less blocking? Where did it go? Where did it go? Okay, they moved it down here, but I want them to say it. Okay, so you basically add the word async after it, and then what it does is it defers it to later. You're saying it's not necessary. Please use this asynchronously. And this is now standard. So if I were to go to the bottom here, this script which you're downloading does not download asynchronously, nor does this one. So this happens inside of the head script tag. So you can get an optimization boost just by doing that. And same thing. This is the head tag just by doing that. Because chances are the user is not going to click on the button that you made right away. So they'll see the website first. It'll take them a whole second to figure out what to click on. And then this will have downloaded after their mind has processed it. And they won't know the difference, but it'll look like it loads faster for them. And let's look at the CSS version of that. Alright, it was a preload versus prefetch. This was a really long article on, hey, I am a paid service person. Please let me read the article. Okay, cool. So preload, prefetch, priorities, and Chrome. Also, Chrome has now won like 70% of the browser space, and Microsoft Edge is now essentially Chrome. They took the open source Chrome platform and they're like, we're throwing away what we did. So if you develop things for Chrome, it's essentially everything. So a little fun fact. Okay. So link, rel, preload, or prefetch. So all right, more network stuff. 10% improvement. Where's the code? All right. This works for fonts, but I don't care about fonts right now. I want to talk about CSS. All right, link rel. I read a little bit of this earlier, but I'm looking for yeah, so the H2 server push is use preload. Alright, I found the gem. So preload resources, you have high confidence will be used in the current page, and then prefetch sources should be used in future navigations. So if I were to look at this one right here, I would imagine should be, this one should be preloaded, this one should be prefetched. And to kind of mitigate that, since you're only really using the nav bar on the first page, you would kind of put the nav bar style here, because I have a feeling that these two would finish and your page would render before this actually hits into effect. And seeing as you have two styles that would be exactly the same, they won't really conflict with each other. Oh my god, I've been talking for 39 minutes. This is forever. Alright, I'm just going to kill this right now, to be honest with you. Stop. Alright, well, hope you found this helpful. I did a lot of sitting and staring, so I'll try to summarize these in the description below with timestamps.